What's up, everyone? It's week 5. This is Shoot the Gap. Joining me, as always, my friend Jorge Edwards. We will take a look at the news, the unfortunate injuries, do some money or mirage, see who some of our plays and fades are, and then we're gonna fill up our bellies with a little bit of a sack lunch. Won't you join us? Well, here we are again, Jorge.
I know. It's like old times.
I know this will be fun. It was a I think a down week in waivers. Um, Not like a ton. I mean, there was quite a bit of action that we can talk about, of course.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't know. It doesn't feel like as spicy a week on both offense and defense as in other weeks, which is sometimes when you should actually strike the most is when you can gain that competitive edge because everybody else is kind of ho humming it through the week. How's
Right.
your week been?
Not bad, not bad. We got a couple waiver articles that went out the other day. I hope they help people a lot. We had the waiver wire show. Had a lot of people tune in for that last night. Your wife was a fantastic commenter during the chat. I don't know if you saw any of that. That was much love to carry. But yeah, we've had a lot of great shows tonight. We had through Dynasty 365. We've had Fourth and Frames, which just finished, and ending with the best here at Shoot the Gap. And normally Hollywood would be here and I would be here, but I've been missing all season, so it feels great to be back on the show with you, man.
Yeah, and shout out to Hollywood's wife who is ill, and he being the preeminent husband of the year candidate, he is making sure she is taking uh, well care of, and you and I will take well care of this show. Starting off, let's jump into some a little bit of news and mostly injuries. Some news, mostly injuries. Let's get the first one out of the way. This
This
is the one that
hurts.
hurt. I know it does because
It hurts so bad. Yeah.
this has been your guy for a few years now. You have definitely led the march on the Matthew Judon love successfully. You have turned a lot of people's attention his way, and even if you haven't, you've turned my attention his way, and that's really all that truly matters. But he tore his bicep out for the season. Pretty significant loss for New England. How many leagues do you have Matthew Judon in that you're scrambling to find a replacement?
Too many,
Yeah.
including one of the dynasty leagues. It's all IDP that you and I are in.
Mm.
And just to give you an idea of how badly things have gone, let me tell you who I just added to take over Matthew Judon's spot. Let me pull it up right now.
That should be good.
David Onyemata.
Oh,
That's who I can find on waivers. That's who I'm rolling
okay.
with instead of Matt Judon this week.
Yeah, that's a rough go when you have to go with the defensive tackle over one of the best
Yeah.
edge rushers in all of football. Yeah, at times can be a little tough, but David Onyemata has had uh, good success so far on the season. Good pressure rate. He's fitting in well with his new team and all, and so you could do worse. You could do worse,
Well,
but
maybe
you
maybe there's a couple people on today's show that we'll be talking about that might be able to do a better job right now.
who knows? Maybe so. We'll get there. One person who won't be is different position, of course. Same team. Potential defensive rookie of the year, Christian Gonzalez,
This
fell
sucks.
awkwardly, dislocated his shoulder, torn labrum. Does suck because from a real football perspective, he was really, really making a name for himself. And again, just another person that so many teams should have drafted instead of some of the people they did draft. And you wonder, hey, how could he have helped that teams? But that's a different argument for a different show, for a different time, for a different night. But IDP wise, Christian Gonzalez hurts more football than IDP, unless you're in a cornerback only league, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But like the passes defense, just even for the first couple weeks, for Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, he was playing pretty well, even as a corner. But you're absolutely right. Cornerbacks, if you're not in a cornerback specific league, more often than not, don't really bring you that high upside as a safety would.
Yeah, it's fun to have, and then certain scoring, Kings Classic scoring for a cornerback is can be really advantageous. But it is volatile. And obviously, it's also really dangerous too, because that sucks. Sorry, Christian Gonzalez. But another defensive back who had, I don't know what to think of this one. Brian Branch leaves the game with what was apparently maybe a high ankle sprain at first, taped up, came back on the field, re-aggravated again, left the field again. Then they're not quite sure exactly if it's high ankle or not. Any prognosis information updates on Brian Branch that you can pass along?
Not as of right now. I'll pull something up though while you're talking.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's any more. I mean, it's optimistic that he's going to play is the last I've heard. But Brian Branch has been extremely dynamic, coming in as a slot corner for Detroit, which with their offense, with the leads that they've had, they forced teams to attack a little bit more so than normal. And he has just demonstrated that he can stay in the box if he needs to, and he can rack up tackles. I mean, if you look at the Detroit Lions as a whole on the season, solo wise, he's number 2 behind, coincidentally, another cornerback in Jerry Jacobs. So Detroit top 2 tacklers from a solo standpoint are 2 corners, and then the linebackers of Ansel and Derek Barnes. But Brian Branch, not only 25 tackles, but 3 tackles for a loss, 4 passes defensed, the interception, and then the pick 6. So he's doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, he did not make practice according to the practice reports today, and he's not really a lock to play this week.
Okay, there you go. So, there are definitely options out there at corner and safety that we can discuss. And if you have questions about those, if you have Brian Branch, you don't want to start him, and you want some options. Number 1, you can always check out our rankings over at fantasyandframes.com, and you'll see our rankings for cornerback. You can read Jorge's waiver wire article. And then I will have my start sit article coming out very shortly that hopefully maybe will give some more options in that way as well.
We got a question here from Malcolm over on Facebook. What's your take on Nate Landman? I have thoughts. Do you have thoughts on Nate Landman?
I'd like to hear yours first.
Troy Anderson. So coincidentally, heading into this week, I knew Troy Anderson was injured. I know he was going to miss some time. Didn't realize that he was out for the year. Didn't realize that till a couple of days ago. I was like, holy shit, he's out for the year. So here's this guy, Nate Landman, who just walks into, Wembley Stadium. It was Wembley, right? It wasn't Tottenham on
Yes,
Sunday?
I believe it was was Wembley.
Okay, so Nate Landman decides to walk into Wembley Stadium and post 10 total tackles, 8 solo, 2 assists, with a 22.2% tackle efficiency. That is ridiculous. Yep. So what are my thoughts? What's my take on Nate Landman there, Malcolm? He's fucking good. And if you had Troy Anderson or you're weak at linebacker, especially with bye weeks starting to start this week, I would definitely put him on your roster if you had the space.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I don't know if I was as excited as you were. I would have gauged my level of excitement for Nate Landman, name aside, at probably 7, 6.5, 7. I thought was fair. 80% of snaps, and was more than efficient with him. But I like yours. Seems like about a 9.2, and if that's the case, then I'm backing it. And trust me, if there's a chance you can ever pick up a linebacker with a partial or pretty close to full-time role, again, do the comparisons. That's essentially like picking up that running back that you need or that you can get that's getting. It's hard to say 50, 80% of the workload because you can't compare because there's not 2 running backs at the same time typically, but a heavy volume running back, and those are so valuable in fantasy. So,
yeah, no, I'm right there with you. He was more efficient than Caden Ellis was last week, and I love Caden Ellis. I think he's a fantastic player. But like you just said, I guess my excitement stems from the fact that it just came out of nowhere, and he just did so well. And given the fact that we are entering bye weeks, this could be somebody that you may want to be paying attention to or have on your roster just to fill in for you, even if it's for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's no harm in picking him up and stashing him on your roster.
No, not in the least. And I mean, and you have a Houston team that is honestly, with the amount of the offensive improvements that they've made, there's a good chance that could lend to another decent week out of Landman as well. And then, not to go too far ahead, but week 6 is your Commanders.
Yep.
All teams that have been middle of the pack or better to opposing linebackers. So there's optimism there. There's not optimism in Odafe Owe for his chance to play this week. I gotta tell you that team, holy moly, good Lord, you want to talk about just injury after injury after injury. It is just relentless. And so then you have to think, okay, here's an edge rush group that you have David Ojabo on the IR, Odafe Owe inactive for each of the last 2 games. You have a person like Tyus Bowser is another one that's out. And you're starting people like Tavius Robinson seeing the most snap shares at edge. And then our guy, Jadeveon Clowney.
I was going to say, it's bad or good depending when Jadeveon Clowney is the best rated edge rusher on the entire team throughout the entire season.
It is. It's very much so. Here is a fun little fact of Jadeveon Clowney. As I'm finishing up I actually just finished up the IDP roundup for week 4, which I will have out. And you'll be proud of me. I even updated the Canva image to say week 4. I know. Watch out. Graphic designers across the land.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've shared it with you yet, but I guess
okay.
I can. Doesn't mean I can talk and share and do all kinds of things at the same time. A very versatile individual when it comes to that. I'm going to pass on that, and I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that people know what this fun fact about said Jadeveon Clowney is, and it is this: when Jadeveon Clowney has led the way with 6 pressures for the Ravens, but didn't record a sack. The sack to pressure ratio has never really been in his favor, as this is the 8th game dating back to 2020 in which he's had more than 5 pressures without a sack. That encompasses Jadeveon Clowney. All kinds of pressure, looks exciting. You watch in a game and you say, this man's going to have 15 sacks on the season. And he ends up with 3. And you don't know why. And it doesn't really make sense, but it is what it is. And I hate that analysis, but it is what it is.
It is. Sometimes it is what it is, man.
Yep. It is what it is. It is what it is. Unfortunately for Tre'Davious White, you can't control. When the hell? What's up with the Achilles injuries? Am I missing something? I mean, is that a vaccine thing? Are we talking? Is there a correlation link between COVID and Achilles? Is that the Achilles heel of the COVID vaccine? Is literally the Achilles?
Are we about to pull an Aaron Rodgers and call somebody Mr. Pfizer and start all this all over again? Because that's opening up a can of worms. I don't know what it is, but it's happening more often than not. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, I was not trying to put that together, but I just happened to do that. It sucks, man. You saw him guarding that wide receiver, then as soon as the receiver made the cut, he was like, "Nope, I'm sitting down because I just tore something." Dude, and it was just not pretty. You feel bad for the guy.
I do. I can't even imagine the pain that must feel like, because I've had Achilles tendonitis before, and I can't walk. How these guys can walk with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, what kind of pain meds do they give them on the field to be like, "All right, you're good," and they're like,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kind of walk over. There's no amount of pain medicines that can put Eddie Jackson back on the field. He has been declared out again. Kwity Paye left after during the game with a concussion, which is really shitty news. I'm a big Kwity Paye fan. There could have residual and correlative effects on the rest of that Indianapolis defensive line, which we can talk about. But before we do that, let's talk about Shaq Leonard. And here's another, the situation was dire. It wasn't great. We knew him and EJ Speed were already basically switching on and off, splitting snaps, if you will. Shaq Leonard then leaves the game. re-aggravates a back injury that's been nagging or a groin injury. There's two different situations. Not sure which one's worse, but what are you doing with Shaq Leonard at this point? Are you holding if they, are you just going to cut him loose? What's your take?
Man, I'm picking up EJ Speed. That's probably the first thing I want to do if he's still available, and I have Shaq Leonard. It's hard for me to cut him loose just because you don't know. You don't know. What you do know is he's been not playing that great. So I will say this: with the amount of linebackers that are out there, I would not blame anybody for dropping a Shaq Leonard and going with somebody who has a little bit more consistency, even if they don't reach the ceiling that we've seen Leonard reach in the past. There's just a lot more consistent tackle production out there, which is great for your fantasy leagues. So yeah, to answer that question, I guess I would cut him and bring somebody else on to find somebody with more upside.
It's crazy. I mean, I know it's weird to think about, but
yeah,
I mean, obviously the depth of your bench, the situation, yada yada yada, all those things are definitely involved. EJ Speed, as you talked about, the one thing with him is that now when you go from maybe a 50 to 60% of the snap, if he can creep up to that 80, 90%, here's a guy that historically, or at least this year, he hasn't exactly had this fantastic tackle efficiency, around 11.5%. But sometimes it just being on the field longer, there's many players, Alex Singleton, if you're listening, this is you, being on the field less, he's more productive and efficient. And why that is, I don't know. But others, when they're on the field more, they relax a little bit. Maybe that's EJ Speed, and maybe we'll see. It's not like EJ Speed's a stud, but as we talked about, linebackers playing 80% or 90% are not easy to find, and you need them. You need to go get them.
All right.
You hopefully already had Chad Muma, and Devin Lloyd with the thumb surgery is out again, and Chad Muma steps into, I think, a good role. What's your take on Chad Muma? Are you higher than me on him? Lower than me, you think?
I'm starting him. I mean, I whether it's because I don't have any other option, that I'm there. I'm high. It's hard when Aluakun overshadows everybody.
Yeah.
And you think maybe just there's just only so many tackles to go around. But I think Muma can make a great LB3, LB2.
I mean, I love the matchup this week against Atlanta, this past week, and that was helpful. So when he played 99% of snaps, 7 tackles, 2 passes defensed, look good around the ball. It's just going forward, you got to make sure that he has, I would say, a solidified role per se. I think he's going to play a lot.
Yeah,
but I don't. We saw Devin Lloyd getting snaps off here and there, and I don't know if that was a product of play or just coaching philosophy. We'll get a better gauge going forward. How long do you think Devin Lloyd's out? 2 more weeks?
2 more weeks. You just read my mind. Exactly. 2 more weeks is what I was thinking.
That gives them a matchup against Buffalo, which could be decent, and then Indy, which I really like, especially if the Indianapolis Colts, if he's back and this Shane Steichen-led offense is playing at the pace they are. It's just that pace of play really lends to positive snaps for the defense to see some action. So That's where we're at with Chad Muma. And positively, hopefully, is that Nick Bolton is trending in the right direction. Got a little bit of practice in today, if that's the case. Bad news for Drew Tranquil owners. Jalen Phillips is another one, got limited practice. There are many ancillary or correlate, I keep wanting to say correlation or correlative effects. I don't know why. I can't just think of a different word to use, but
just make up a word. Let's think about this and make up a
a word that has wide-reaching, I would say, scenarios unfolding on other players, stipulations,
wow, that's
reactions. I don't know. I don't know.
Reaction.
God, I hope someone can come up with something better. Really solid.
We have a week to figure this out. That's what we're
Good
doing.
God. Don't clip this shit. That's not the clip we want. But if Jalen Phillips is out,
Yeah.
we know that helps Andrew Van Ginkel. It
Mhm.
has helped David Long. It has helped. Well, that's about it, really. But those are two factors that have been changed when Jalen Phillips is out. So we'll keep you posted on that. He got limited practice in last week too, and he still missed the game. So I'm not gonna be too excited. Fletcher Cox. I know it's not typically a name we mention on the show too often, but I wanted to because is there a case that possibly if he doesn't play, we can see even more of Jalen Carter? Is that possible to see more of Jalen Carter? I mean, he only played 36 of the snaps last week, so barely, not, almost 50%. What if he starts getting closer to the 58 mark that Fletcher Cox played? Is Jalen Carter a DL2 this week or DL2 upside?
Didn't heading into last week, Jalen Carter have like the third most pressures of any defensive lineman heading into that week? And now you're telling me
you were close. Again, you'll find all this information and more tomorrow over on the IDP roundup. But Jalen Carter, again, led the way in the pressures for the Eagles with 5. His 20 pressures only trails Aaron Donald among interior defensive linemen. So,
that's
yes.
Good. So he's up there. So not, okay, interior defensive lineman. But still, that's ridiculous. And the one thing that made me hesitant, especially in like defensive tackle leagues, is like you have Fletcher Cox, who was still dominating the snaps, and Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis and Carter would rotate in and out. To answer your question, if Fletcher Cox is missing time and I have a D tackle spot open, I want Jalen Carter filling that spot. This dude is a freak athlete and just beats his opponents, beats the tackles, beats the blocks. Excuse me. Very excited for his upside.
I am too. And yes, he is actually 8th amongst all defensive linemen and edge rushers with the 20 pressures. His 20 pressures over his, he got 104 snaps. That's about 19.2% pressure rate. That right there will do it for you. If you
pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Pretty good, as they say. And then did not practice today is Dre Greenlaw. That's been a on and off. Greenlaw practices. He doesn't practice. He's game time decision. I don't like it.
It's funny, in the IDP only league we're in, I changed my team name to Forgot About Dre because everybody was doing music. Oh, yeah. And now it's getting to the point where I may have to forget about Dre because he's always disappearing, man. It's not good. It's not a good look.
No, it's not. It sucks. And it's the one, I finally, going into the season, you want to clip any of my takes from preseason is Dre Greenlaw's better than Fred Warner. Fred Warner's basic. Dre Greenlaw's not. And Fred Warner's been fantastic. Dre Greenlaw's been fantastic too. On a per snap basis, he's better than Fred Warner. He just, unfortunately, you need snaps, and he's not doing that quite as much. But that is the news and injuries almost. I got to add one more little thing that I did not at the time, and it was a bit of either one of two things: clairvoyance, luck, coincidence. But at 7:30 this morning, I went into our couple different IDP leagues that I have. One is the one that you're talking about earlier. Another one's one over at MFL, and I made a drop because I needed to pick up a person, and that drop was Randy Gregory. Yep. And then fast forward 3 hours, and the Denver Broncos released Randy Gregory. So I'm not saying I'm GM. I mean, I'm not saying that. But if he were to go to a different team, is there a ideal landing spot for him? I mean, do you still see upside with Randy Gregory, or are those days past for you?
I stopped caring about. Okay, so to be fully honest with you, I stopped caring about Randy Gregory when he left the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, that's fair.
I I don't ideal landing spot. I no,
You don't
I
have to
don't
have
see
one.
anybody. Maybe Baltimore out of necessity, just because people are just dropping like flies, right?
Hey,
Um,
that's not a bad call. They maybe so, maybe so.
yeah,
Huh.
that'd
Uh,
probably be the one team that jumps out to me right now.
I keep seeing the Chiefs names mentioned about. I don't know why. Probably because I follow more Chief shit, and I think that's just that's them wanting to stick it to him and say, "Hey, you have Frank Clark, we'll take Randy Gregory," and it's ludicrous. Doesn't matter, and not the rapper Ludacris, the
I
ridiculous
got you.
Ludacris. You never know. Just got to make sure clear.
I
Keep it clear.
understand.
Speaking of making sure that it's clear, sometimes we like to keep it clear if some of the waiver wire pickups of the week or ads, most popular ads, are worth their weight in gold. Are they money or are they fool's gold? And things that are going to lead you to that mirage where it looks great, the oasis, and then disappears into a
Yeah.
worthless fab pickup. And the first one I think is probably the most polarizing of all because it's Khalil Mack. I mean, not much more you need to say than a six sack game in week 4. Clearly, the defensive lineman or hell, linebacker won on the week, no matter which position designation you want to give him. But Khalil Mack had, I would say, exceeded expectations from what you would expect last week. Pretty obvious, but to the point of so crazy. I mean, 6 sacks, 10 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 9 pressures. Yet, despite all that, still, even with the 9 pressures, that only elevates him to a 14% pressure rate, which isn't terrible. But is Khalil Mack someone that's going to be money for fantasy owners or a mirage?
He is going to be money for the person who magically and clairvoyantly picks the 1 or 2 weeks a year he goes off.
Yep, that's great.
For everybody else, you will have no idea when that's happening. It also helps when the opposing quarterback literally fumbles the ball, 3 times, and he's racking up stats in other ways besides just sacks, or the guy holds on to the ball too much and he just sets him up for a sack. I will say, was it Mack lining up against Colton Miller? I want to say, like pushing him back into Aiden O'Connell, who just
Right.
looked like a statue, like a deer in headlights.
Uh-huh.
It was, it was, it was really embarrassing if you're like a Colton Miller fan, which it's the first time I've ever said
Yeah, who are
the
you talking
word
to?
Colton Miller fan. Um, it was really bad, but Joey Bosa didn't play that game. What's going to happen when Bosa comes back? It's just we've seen it for so many years. Just it's so inconsistent. The performance you just mentioned. It's hard for me to get really excited for from an IDP perspective about Khalil Mack.
Mm-hmm.
Great for we talk about this a lot. Great for football, real football doesn't necessarily translate for great for fantasy football, and bad for real football doesn't necessarily translate as bad for fantasy football. So it's weird.
That's exactly right. And what's crazy is that you're right. Some of those plays against Colton Miller were there, but Miller on the day was Vegas's highest graded pass blocker, only allowing 2 pressures. It was Jermaine Eluminor over on the right side that was the recipient of 7 different pressures, maybe not all to Khalil Mack, but we saw Mack go to wherever he could to get to the
Right.
statues of the Vegas Raiders. But I agree with you. I don't want to invest. I would love to have had, like many people have noted today that I've seen in best ball leagues, if you drafted Khalil Mack and you're 60, 70 points or whatever you got, you're extremely happy, and rightfully so. That doesn't mean I want to go spend all my fab on someone if he was available in your league. Bid with caution, especially considering they're going into a bye this week. Maybe that means you could get them for really cheap if no one else bids on them because they don't want to waste the roster space. We'll see. There's some gamesmanship that can go into that.
Oh, sure.
We talked earlier, Jalen Phillips.
Yep.
He has the insert adjective of effect on other players.
Yep.
Or adverb. Is it? No. Whatever. Probably
Um,
adverb, actually. Because
yeah.
is it descriptive? It's descriptive of. We'd have to have both. I don't have the. I haven't. There's too many other words. English 101, and we're gonna just go into fantasy football 102, the second level course of determining if David Long, a
It helps. It helps with Van Ginkel playing up close to the line of scrimmage. Then
does help. But
yeah,
here's what we've seen of David Long so far on this season. Doesn't play a ton of snaps, gets pulled in coverage. Then Jalen Phillips is out. He plays a heavy percentage of the snaps, has a great week. Then misses time again, doesn't play as many snaps. And then last week we saw not only David Long play the majority of the snaps, but we also saw Jerome Baker leave the field because Jerome Baker is not being praised by the coaching staff anymore. Feeling like slow to respond, not filling the right gap. A lot of the negatives that we didn't see out of Jerome Baker before are starting to rear their ugly head. And I'm wondering if that means David Long can see more playing time if and when Jalen Phillips returns. What do you think?
I think it's interesting. Like you look at first and second down, we're seeing David Long playing considerably more snaps than Jerome Baker, but it's on passing downs that you see for third down where Jerome Baker is coming in more. The tackle efficiency was there for David Long. I think you hit the nail right on the head. It's the snaps, man. You got to follow the snaps, and it's really David Long who's trending, or at least was trending last week and the week before, into playing more snaps than Jerome Baker. Yeah, so I'm excited for what's happening with David Long in Miami coming over from the Tennessee Titans in free agency. But you talked about with Andrew Van Ginkel being closer, playing the edge role. What happens if Jalen Phillips comes back? How does that? What is the domino effect for fantasy then? That might be something we'll talk about a little bit later too. But it's as of right now, if things stay the status quo, or Van Ginkel is playing edge and David Long's on there in the snap playing more snaps, you got to roll with them, right?
Mm-hmm. When he's been on the field, he's on a really on a per snap basis. He's been successful, and I just, like you said, chase snaps. Didn't like the volatility week in and week out, and so I wanted to avoid that. So I'm going to go money, and because I believe that he will see more and more. I used a word there, Jorge, volatility.
Yes, you did.
Volatile. That is
Yep.
Explosive. It's also a term to describe, I would say, completely different effects in that Nick Benito's play is very volatile. It can be shitty on nowhere to be seen, or it can be 2.5 sacks and looking fantastic. That is volatility that I don't like. But Randy Gregory, he gone. Nick Benito, who, like we said, I was talking about, I clipped it from our pregame show. I wish I had the guts to follow through and trust that he was going to see the snaps. I didn't. I also didn't know it was going to be slobber knocker and game against Chicago, and that led to Nick Benito being the talk of the town, if you will. He was the talk of your article, correct?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was pretty impressed to find out that he leads all edge rushers on the Broncos in total pressures, despite having the lowest snap share of the edge rushers on the Broncos themselves. And I kind of attributed that to the whole Randy Gregory kind of taking his spot there. And that's why the snaps were kind of lower than was to be expected. But given the opportunity, holy crap, he again, bye weeks, need somebody to fill in an edge rush position. That's a hard one to fill in. He looked pretty damn good. I think it was what the DL3 in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring.
Yep. Yes, he was. I will say I moved him even. I had him as high as like 30 overall, I think, at one point. And I was lunacy. I was probably about 30 spots higher than anybody else at that. And I was like, maybe I'll drop back just a little bit. Not that that dictates it, but
Well, which by the way, I want you mentioned spots and moving and rankings. I just want to give you props because you finished as the number one IDP ranker for Fantasy Pros in Week 4. I believe this is what your second time being number one this season. So
thanks. Appreciate that.
kudos to you, my friend.
A lot of it what fell on listening to you guys too. I moved Chinanawosu up higher after just realizing my mistake of not having him high enough. Mafe, all the Seattle players, just there were some good hits that just happened to come into play. But I don't know where I'll have Nick Benito this week, but I will say the next two people are interested. I'm very interested in because I could see one, and I put this as a dual. This is a dual money, dual Mirage because I don't know which one, if either, both, neither, will step up. We talked earlier, and I'm sorry again, Matthew Judon, but someone's got to step in. Someone will see an influx of snaps. Will that person be Keon White, who during the preseason we saw was really disruptive? A lot of people were very optimistic that he could play and work his way into a full-time role. Or Josh Uche, who last year we saw was like a league winner. And this year he is probably on waivers in some leagues. Right. What do you think? Money or Mirage?
For either of these guys,
yep. Choose your destiny.
Man, so as the season has gone on this past month, we've seen Uchi snaps kind of go down, and we've seen Keon White's kind of go up. But it's disappointing that neither has been able to kind of separate themselves too much. I mean, I think we saw last week Dietrich Wise Jr. him dominating the total snap share on defense. On passing downs and just overall pressure rate of 18.5%. He would be my guy that I'd want to, if I was going to pick a replacement on the defensive lineman for the Patriots to roster as a defensive end, it'd be him. I think it's Mirage for both. The fact that that neither of them can separate themselves. And I really wanted it to be Josh Uche, excuse me, just because of how well he played last year. But, again, following the snaps, like his has gone down. Keon White's has started to rise. That's not a good sign for a veteran to start losing snaps to somebody. Mirage. Both of them are Mirages for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I believe that any given week we could see some production out of one or the other. I would say that if I had to invest, if I was going to invest $1, it'd probably be on Keon White because I think he will only be he's a free ad at this point, and I think maybe there could be something there. I am more excited about what the effects of all this of Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon could mean to one Marte Mapu because I like the fact that he's playing a lot of linebacker and in the box, some safety, some at the slot. He's starting to fill into a more than part-time role. And if he could get on the field full-time, he's one of those stat stuffing guys, the kind of in the mold of Kyle Duggar, another person who had a huge week last week that as a result of him being in the box enough. So that's what we want to see. But I do want to say to Blake in the chat, I do see the question. And I have held firm all year, as hard as it is for me not to answer offensive questions in the on the show, because I really want to, and I don't want to be a jerk and be like, no, but we've said no there. Man, I just dropping.
I'll tell you what, Blake. So we like, since it's being an IDP show, we like to keep it to IDP. But tomorrow night we have our mailbag show at 7 p.m. and I will star this question. And
Oh,
if
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
join us tomorrow at 7, you'll be the first person whose question we will answer. Does that sound good?
I think that sounds good. I think that seems fair. You are a man of the people, Jorge. A
What I
man
can,
of the
man.
people. So, well, from money to Mirage, let's go through. Let's do a couple of our plays and fades. Last week, we had some success. We had some disappointments, of course, as always. But I feel strong about this week. I feel like this is going to be the week that we're going to just nail each one of these. We're going to drop people out and say, you know what, avoid, avoid, avoid. Last week, my one that got some ooh and ah, mostly from Hollywood, because he was the only person listening, at least live that I could hear, was Montez Sweat. And I know that that worked out. But I like my plays because I like talking about positives. I don't like talking about this positive because it hurts me to even mention this person's name as much as I don't really care for him or have not cared. But I am starting Patrick Queen against Pittsburgh. And you probably have Patrick Queen as a starting linebacker already. But if you had that decision to have to make, I am comfortable putting him probably into that high LB2 conversation now because he plays the Pittsburgh Steelers team. The number one, we don't know if it's going to be a hobbled Kenny Pickett. I haven't ruled him out yet. I think he's out, but you get it. Or Mitch Trubisky. Not quite sure which one's better or worse. It's and for both of those two things. But here's what I have seen. Baltimore, despite the edge rush situation that they face or the lack thereof, they are blitz happy. I mean, blitz, 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 which we're not shocked by because we knew that this McDaniel defense coming from Wink Martindale, we thought might be a change, but it hasn't been. Certain players haven't been blitzing as much, but that's not Patrick Queen. He has been. He has, but he's the 13th most targeted linebacker. He is also amongst the league leaders in pass rush snaps from a linebacker. What that means is this: Pittsburgh's offensive line, they are the 4th worst in pass block efficiency. If I'm going to see Patrick Queen and Roquan and everybody else blitz enough, at some point the floor is elevated even more so for Patrick Queen. And let's say that they are effective and they just prevent the blitz from getting to him all the time. Those passes are going to be short to intermediate, number one, because, well, there won't be time to do anything more. And if he's already the 13th most targeted linebacker, there's a very good chance that he's going to be heavily targeted in this game. So I see blitz opportunities. I see plenty of tackle volume in the middle, and I see coverage opportunities that could, as a result of pressure, turn into turnovers. So Patrick Queen, there you go. Congratulations. I am playing you.
Very nice. All right, let me go to one of my plays. And it's somebody who, according to Fantasy Pros' ECR for week 5, is the defensive lineman 55. Samson Ebukam versus the Titans. You know, him and his matchup with Andre Dillard for the Tennessee Titans, who I believe, if let me pull this up here, Dillard has allowed the 6th most pressures, and he has allowed the most sacks amongst offensive linemen in the entire National Football League. Not great, Bob, especially going against Ebukam, who has a 21.1% win rate per PFF. While, you know, Dillard hasn't allowed a sack yet on the season, despite giving up all those pressures, Ebukam is just playing so much better than he has during his time in San Francisco. Now he's over here in via free agency in Indianapolis. This should be a very squash move here of a game in terms of just getting all the fantasy points. So definitely, if you need to fill in the defensive lineman spot, I think Ebukam gives you a really good matchup this week.
Yeah, and the hope there is also that DeForest Buckner plays. With DeForest Buckner playing, I love that even more so with him as the DL 55 in ECR. If Buckner's out, I'm still going to move him up. If Buckner's in, I'm going to move him up for sure. And I'll probably move up Deo Odenigbo as well because, again, we have exploited the Tennessee Titans offensive line pretty much all year. Sometimes it hasn't always worked out, but something tells me this is going to be one of those games that's going to be physical, divisional play. It's going to just end up with, I think, plenty of pressures. And what do you think? Over under 1 sack. You think he's gonna get more than 1.5, or just one?
I think one. You see, damn it, we're on the same page. I think 1.5 is kind of where I'm leaning. To be honest with you,
I like it. That's definitely DL2, DL3 upside for sure if the tackles don't follow. But let's see. Do I have another play that I like?
Yes. I have a play. You have a play that I like. I'm very happy about.
Are you really happy about it? You should be. You should be happy for your
team. I could be happy about this one.
Yeah, I think we've been wrong about this one. Let's be honest.
This is true.
This is weird to say, but yes, Chase Young, I owe you an apology. For years now, I have consistently and continuously said that I don't believe that you are going to play enough snaps to be a worthwhile investment. You are a quote unquote avoid. And I now must eat those words because color me impressed. Win rate, check. Pressure rate, check. Snap rate, check. All excellent. Bears offensive line, not excellent. And Chase Young has just done what you would expect is, well, no, it's not what you would expect. He's done what you wouldn't expect. Played on the field, actually stayed healthy, but not just a one-hit wonder and, like got a lucky sack off a Jonathan Allen pressure or Montez Sweat led someone over to Chase Young. He's doing it all. And he's playing. I mean, like I said, his snap percentage is heavy. And holy shit, you give me all of those things right now. I'm in. He's 15th in pressures. He's 9th in win rate. And he's the DL 24 in Fantasy Pro scoring. So Chase Young, come on down. Yep. I'm in this week.
All aboard that bandwagon for tomorrow night. Let's go for another play here. Denzel Perryman looks like he's going to be coming back this week. All reports are trending in that direction, which is good. Obviously. There you go. That's my analysis. No, look, when he was playing on the field, he was dominating snaps. He was the green dot person player, I believe. So he was on the field the majority of the snaps. And it really came down to, him and Christian Harris. Christian Harris has been, in terms of, performance, in terms of efficiency, his snaps have been going down. His efficiency has been going down. Henry To'oTo'o's has been going up. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Perriman and To'oTo'o who are going to be the linebackers that are going to be on the field more often than not. So that being said, I still love what Perriman was doing beforehand, and I still think he's going to get the majority of snaps if he does, in fact, come back this week. So I'm definitely, especially against Atlanta and the heavy running game nature there, that just gives him more opportunity to rack up more tackles there. So definitely on board Denzel Perryman this week.
Yeah, and that's, talk about segues and or good players to talk about leading into the next one is if I'm going to fade somebody, I know as you mentioned the name Christian Harris briefly, that's who I would fade because I think that this is Denzel Perryman to return, throwing chaos into the mix. It's hard to fade because you're seeing Christian Harris last week, most snaps of the season, 12 tackles, and you think this is the Christian Harris that we expected at the beginning of the season, who was going to take Christian Kirksey's job, fight off Denzel Perryman. Denzel Perryman takes the job. Henry To'oTo'o then steps in and gets the majority of the snaps. Christian Harris finally has this bang-up game, going to, draw the ire of D'Amico Ryans, but I don't see it. I think that it's going to end up, if anything, I think it's a Denzel Perryman full-time role, and To'oTo'o and Christian Harris could split snaps. And if that's the case, I just don't want an uncertain role. I'm not dropping Christian Harris, but I'm definitely not starting Christian Harris if I can avoid. I'm tempted to not start To'oTo'o as well, but we'll see.
Yeah, for my fade this week, and this one hurts because we've talked about it for the past couple of years, whether it's been injuries cutting a season short, or injuries cutting his season short.
Yeah.
Divine Diablo, LB 31 on Fantasy Pros, heading into week 5 for the Vegas Raiders playing in Green Bay. In week 4, we saw Luke Masterson take snaps away from Divine Diablo, who coincidentally in week 4 he was actually the best graded linebacker according to PFF amongst all the linebackers for the Las Vegas Raiders. You go back the past 4 weeks for Diablo: 60 snaps, 73 snaps, 52, 46. Not the direction you want to go in. Not to mention he's coming off of only a 6.5% tackle efficiency in week 4. 6.5%. Like normally we talk about, elite tackle efficiencies in the 20s, something, 16, 15 above is, really good. We get to around the 10s. I don't think I've ever talked about a linebacker on this show that has had a sub 10 tackle efficiency that has been ranked so high, according to Fantasy Pros ECR. 6.5%. That's ridiculous. So things are not trending in his direction, and it's unfortunate because it's somebody that both you and I think have been pretty high on for a few years, and it's just not working out.
It's not. It's unfortunately the only thing that has been divine has been our sack lunch predictions of the season so far. And that is then, of course, buoyed by last week's 0 sack performance from TJ Watt. I had to go with the low-hanging fruit, make sure I can maintain this lead that Hollywood that I had over Hollywood. He takes Trey Hendrickson, who gets half a sack, and we are now tied on the season.
Nice.
And this is my chance to take the lead. Your pick does not benefit Hollywood. We have a bet at the end, too. The loser has to pay for an Uber or DoorDash or whatever lunch to the other person's house. Not from here. I don't have to pay for a DoorDash to go all the way to
I got
Tennessee.
You. Just put in their address and then you can do the area. Yeah, I got you.
And so I will be interested to hear. Obviously, as time goes on, we can always include you into this conversation as well. So that being said, who is your sack lunch?
Whoever's playing, again, what?
You ain't doing this, whoever. Nope, you pick one.
It's going to be Andrew Van Ginkel going up against Evan Neal of the New York Giants, who has allowed 20 pressures on the season. Jalen Phillips is still limited. You said it earlier. He was limited heading into last week. He still didn't play. I think the same is going to happen this week. So give me Andrew Van Ginkel getting a sack against Evan Neal of the New York Giants, who is god-awful. There you go. I committed. Not Jalen Phillips or Andrew Van Ginkel. It's Van Ginkel.
Thank you. That, not to be so stingy, but if I'm going to start,
you're right.
If I'm bucking up a Jimmy John sandwich to you, I want that thing to be fair. We did not cut it. We did not make it, to Jimmy John sandwiches. Obviously, you can do whatever you choose. But yes, and Jamie comes in immediately with IDP Masters, far from master. But I'll tell you, I enjoy talking about it because I get you guys in the chat the entire time. Sean agrees with you that it should be Andrew Van Ginkel, and then even says attaboy Jorge. And Jamie, I'm sorry you did miss it. We missed you too, but you have something to listen to in the morning. There's a lot of information, but I'll leave you with this. My sack lunch is one, and this will be a harken back to a name I've already mentioned today, Chase Young against the Chicago Bears. The matchup that I will exploit every single week because for the last 2 years, the Chicago Bears offensive line has been the most pressured per drop back, and he has been the most sacked per drop back. That is Justin Fields. So until that changes, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't continue to go back to that beautiful, beautiful tree of delicious sack apples.
Jamie in the chat. Sack lunch, isn't that a Seinfeld movie? I don't know. Great question.
It is. It's a movie poster from on that. Yeah, it's discussed in the episode The English Patient, which so it's being shown as the same day as The English Patient, and that's a movie like Elaine hates that movie, and so Elaine's desire to see Sack Lunch is frustrated because it's sold out. So they go see The English Patient instead. So yes,
look at you,
excellent. Nice. I read that off the internet. Don't let me fool you. I recognized it when he said it, but I couldn't recall. I forgot it was The English Patient. I knew it was something. Yeah. So
nice.
Oh, I wish we had an awesome Seinfeld.
You should have like the dum 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 or something.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And then I'll just have a call-in line for anybody that wants any type of IDP reference. Like call the 1-800 IDP starts and just hit the number for who you want to start. Your choices. Why don't you just tell me who you want to choose from? You know what that's from? Have you seen that episode of Seinfeld?
No, can't say I have.
That's Kramer. Kramer starts a call in. He thinks it's going to be easy for like hit the number 2 for movie times, and so people hit it. And it just goes beep, and he's like, shit, he doesn't know what it is. He goes, why don't you just tell me what movie you want to see? So it goes along fitting very well with Sack Lunch as well. So
nice.
Jamie, thank you for bringing that up. Great way to end the show with a laugh. And so as everybody else on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network tonight has said, please go over to the YouTube page, like and subscribe if you haven't already done so now. I know that's cliche, but your support means everything. And then realistically, just head over to fantasyandframes.com, read all the articles that everybody's putting out left and right. You can't miss a single day of fantastic fantasy football knowledge. Jorge, any final words, or we catch you on the flip side?
Just thank you very much, everybody, for your support. We love cranking out content for you daily. Don't forget that, like Nate said, head over to fantasyandframes.com, check out our rankings for offense, defense. We got dynasty rankings too. Thursday night, we got our mailbag show at 7 p.m. Eastern before Thursday Night Football. And then Sunday is our big show day from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. We cover every NFL game, talk about all the fantasy relevant players, and most importantly, answer all your questions heading in to each week. So we're looking forward to that, sir.
Nice.
Nice. Is that how we're going out? I should have
no. End it like we should. Yeah, let's start over. Right. I would. But
all right.
We'll have it for you soon, Jamie. See you guys all later.
Later.